War never vanished from the galaxy. It was simply moved from real skies into layers of cold code. Since the war-ban treaties were signed on thousands of worlds, real fleets have had to sit silent in their docks, rusting under starlight. Instead of real bullets and blood, the galaxy pours all its addiction to conflict into vast war super-simulations. There, cities are built of light, armies are woven from algorithms, and explosions are nothing more than bright images on a screen. High above the capital world, the Nexus Sim Academy turned slowly like a giant crystal hung in a dense sea of stars. Its exterior was a skin of silver ceramic armor plates, interlaced with antenna rings like glowing bracelets wrapped around the station's body. At the poles, massive server clusters glowed dimly, their lights pulsing in rhythm like the artificial heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The shuttle carrying the new students slid past one of those glowing clusters, its observation windows flooded with electric blue light. Min pressed his forehead to the clear pane, watching the light flow into thin rivers that curved around the academy. Beneath his hand, the cool metal lip of the window trembled slightly with each course correction, as if the whole shuttle were holding its breath. To his right, a student with translucent wings like frosted glass was trembling slightly, the veins in the wings catching the blue light in glittering patterns. Ahead, a semi-crystalline student with a faceted face reflected the academy, each facet showing the station from a slightly different angle. The announcement system's voice filled the air and then smoothly shifted into Vietnamese in Min's ear. Incoming students and interns, prepare for docking at Nexus Sim Academy. Please secure all personal belongings and be advised. Feelings of anxiety, excitement, or mild panic fall within normal parameters. Min tightened his grip on the strap of his old fabric backpack, feeling the frayed corner and a loose stitch press into his palm. The backpack looked out of place among the sleek anti-grav suitcases and multi-dimensional containers floating smugly like arrogant cubes. In galactic records, Earth was a second-tier world, famous for exporting teachers, psychological counselors, and analysts rather than generals. He smiled faintly to himself at the thought. Someone from a gentle, analytical world being invited into Meta and Balance, the place that adjusted the rules for the biggest wars in simulation. As the shuttle latched onto the academy, a gentle jolt ran along its frame, making the rows of seats tremble like a massive stifled sneeze. The doors slid open, letting in cold white light, and the faint ozone scent of force fields mixed with too perfect recycled air. Nexus Sim's reception corridor was a wide tunnel with an arched ceiling covered in dim light strips and a floor of polished alloy that reflected the shapes of hundreds of wildly different feet. Min was swept along with the stream of newcomers, cloaks, soft armor, wings, and tentacles brushing together in a colorful current. At the end of the corridor, a bank of magrail lifts waited, their transparent shafts revealing the Academy's core like a colossal cave of light within. Min stepped into a lift, the floor buzzing slightly before dropping away in silence, carrying him up to level 47 so fast his stomach skipped a beat. When the doors opened, he stepped into a cool space with a stronger ozone smell and a low humming buzz of server clusters reverberating through the walls. Ahead lay the Meta and Balance atrium with a cathedral-high ceiling and dozens of floating displays, each showing a simulated war from a different angle. One display showed fleets firing at each other against a dark red nebula. Another, a cramped urban battlefield of tangled alleys. And a third, a strategic map where glowing arrows overlapped like schools of fish. Min craned his neck to stare up, feeling as if he had stepped into the eye of a storm of images where every flicker of light was a strategic decision someone had just made.
This is my command.
Intern Min,
I assure you,
Earth,
the data is secure,
right?
and we will
A
proceed
low but
as
clear
planned.
voice sounded behind him. He turned and saw a Zenthari nearly 2 heads taller than him, with dark gray skin and bands of metallic scales on his arms and neck, arranged like armor etched into flesh. His yellow eyes flicked quickly from Min's face to the old backpack and back up again, the corner of his mouth curling into an unreadable smile. "I'm Karesh, acting lead for your meta and balance team," he said. "Don't worry, we won't have you balancing the whole galaxy in your first week." Min bowed his head in an old Earth reflex and smiled. "I'm looking forward to learning," he replied, his voice a little hoarse with nerves. A semi-transparent polyhedral shape suddenly appeared beside a nearby console, spinning slowly and changing color in time with its speech. "New unit registered." A neutral yet faintly playful voice sounded from the shape. "L4R, Balance Supervision System, or Lara if you prefer," Karesh told Min. "It's been here for over 2 centuries and still thinks it's a poet lost in a server room." "Allegation unconfirmed," Lara replied, its colors shifting to a soothing shade of blue. At the next station, a slender girl with faintly translucent skin was bent over her screen, pale blue glowing circuits running from her wrists up to her temples beneath the surface. "This is Sira, Thal," Karesh introduced. Sira looked up, her eyes clear as dark glass, flicking briefly over Min and landing on his worn backpack. "If you plan to tweak anything involving Thal factions in the sim, warn me first," she said, her voice thin but sharp. "I have a long-lasting grudge against people who call extinction an interesting meta." Min swallowed, feeling his throat go dry. "I will be very careful," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Karesh patted Min's shoulder lightly and gestured toward the center of the hall, where a gigantic 3-dimensional star map was slowly turning. On the map was the Kepler cluster, its orbits, trade routes, political influence zones, and potential flashpoints marked by multicolored nodes of light. "This is our battlefield," Karesh said. "No blood, only coefficients." Min was led to an empty console at the outer ring around the map. The console surface was a slab of black glass, but when he slotted his data card in, it flared to life with text, numbers, and graphs, instantly shifting to Vietnamese. One column read, "Simulated Economic Resilience," another, "Public Trust Coefficient," and yet another, "Ideological Radicalization Index." In the bottom corner, almost swallowed by other labels, was a small line of text. "Real Impact Index. Confidential." Min glanced around, seeing Karesh arguing with Sira over some cost function, while Lara murmured to another internal channel. Once he was sure no one was looking, he tapped the label, and an access window popped up with a faint red outline. "Temporary intern access permitted if supervised by AI of Lara level or higher." A small line beneath the prompt blinked. "Lara, mind supervising me for a bit?" Min whispered, almost only to himself. The polyhedral avatar flared into brightness at the edge of the desk, then drifted over to hover by his screen. "Supervision activated," Lara said. "All your actions will now be recorded, both for training and for preventing cosmic accidents." The data gate opened into a dense log list, hundreds of past patches, patch 204, 211, 289, each line a tiny slice of the simulation's history. Next to the simulated effects descriptions was a narrow column titled External Correlation. Min scrolled down, his eyes skimming lines like reduced tactical gains of preemptive strikes. Real-world war approval in Alpha Sector decreased 12% after 3 years. Buffed defenses for minor factions. Slight decrease in real-world secession crises. Min's heartbeat sped up as he realized that what everyone called a game was, somehow, laying a light hand on the wheel of real history. At the end of the list was a line highlighted in pale yellow. Patch 317, Kepler Campaign, pending. When Min expanded its details, the external correlation field showed a bright red number. Probability of regime change in Sector K44 within 18 to 24 months, 73%. Behind him, the debate over player fairness buzzed on, while on the screen before him, a small line of text sat still like a bullet not yet fired. Regime change likelihood, 73%. After his first shift, Min walked out of the Meta and Balance hall, but the 73% still clung to him like a red afterimage blinking behind his eyelids. The technical wing corridor was emptier, its long lights stretching across the floor in parallel streaks like runways for stray thoughts. He stopped by a small viewport overlooking space where the Academy floated above the planet's shadow, so peaceful no one would guess it housed a warehouse of digital wars. Just simulation, Min repeated in his head. But the line, regime change likelihood, 73%, kept popping up like a notification window that refused to close. That night, in the freshman's sleeping pod, the ceiling was a simulated sky, but Min barely looked at the stars, staring instead at his personal interface showing tomorrow's schedule. On the schedule, a new line was flagged as priority. Assist with legacy parameter cleanup, temporary extended access. Good, he thought. More time to look inside this machine. The next morning, Meta and Balance was already packed when Min arrived, the air tight like before an exam with the whole galaxy as the test. Clusters of figures crowded around the Kepler map, which glowed brighter than yesterday, its trade routes blinking like a nervous system about to twitch. Today, we freeze the main parameter set to prepare pushing patch 3.17 to the primary servers, Koresh said, loud enough to cut through the noise. Min, you're with me. We've got a pile of legacy junk to clean up in the auxiliary parameter vault. They left the main hall, walking down narrower corridors into the storage wing, where the light softened and the noise faded into the steady murmur of machinery. The parameter archive room looked like a library without books, only tall cylindrical pillars reaching the ceiling, each containing data blocks floating like lanterns made of code. An older figure in a slightly wrinkled tech coat, holding a cup of something steaming white, was leaning against one of the data pillars. This is Overseer Engineer Ral, Koresh introduced, the one who knows exactly which mistakes we must never repeat. Ral's hair was flecked with gray, and his eyes bore the shadows of too many years in front of screens. But when he looked at Min, his gaze was much sharper than his tired face. "New Earth intern?" Ral asked, his voice low and a little hoarse. Min nodded, his shoulders drawing in slightly out of reflex. "Good," Ral said. "You'll help me prune old parameter branches we no longer use, before they lag the whole system." He set his cup down, touched the nearby data pillar, and a three-dimensional interface unfolded in midair. Dozens of parameter branches, appearing like a glowing tree. Branch names floated around them: Experimental Eco 2B, PvP Chaos Mode, Morale Tuning Old, each one a past idea someone had once thought was clever. "You just need to flag branches that are no longer referenced," Ral said. "But don't touch anything with a triple warning icon, unless you want the Academy to explode metaphorically." Min reached into the interface, feeling a thin resistance layer against his skin as he scrolled through the branches like peeling layers of digital dust. Each time he flagged a branch as deprecated, it dimmed and drifted upward, dissolving into the ceiling like a fragment of memory erased from a collective mind. Among the forest of names, one caught Min's eye: Legacy Patch Human Origin with a lock icon and a faint red border. He tapped the branch lightly, but the interface shuddered and displayed Restricted, Director Level or Authorized Systems Only. "See something interesting?" Ral asked, stepping closer, steam from his cup still curling lazily by his hand. Min startled and quickly pulled his hand back from the interface. Ral glanced up at the locked branch, his old eyes suddenly sharpening. "That one is not on today's task list," he said slowly. The legacy patch branches are the legacy of the first designers, most of whom were, he paused briefly, from Earth. Humans used to work here? Min blurted, his heart skipping a beat. They didn't just work here, Ral replied. They helped turn real war into war that only exists in code, after a crisis no one teaches about in history classes anymore. He lifted his cup and blew on it, the rising heat warping the data projection slightly like memories being stirred. My advice, Ral continued, if you see anything with legacy or human origin in the name, walk around it. Here, touching the wrong parameter is like touching a time bomb, only it explodes much, much slower. Min nodded, but his curiosity didn't go out. It just pulled inward like a spark hiding under ash. At break time, Min left the parameter vault and headed down to the Academy canteen, where the walls were covered in news screens from every corner of the galaxy. On a screen near his seat, a news channel logo appeared, followed by images of a hazy star frontier with a few small stations. Tensions continue to rise in the Kepler cluster, the anchor said, with parties failing to reach agreement on the governance of Sector K-44. Min stared at the K-44, feeling as if someone had knocked twice on his ribcage from the inside. Below, the ticker scrolled slowly. Conflict remains within simulation boundaries, but analysts warn of potential spillover into real economies if it continues. The phrase "remains within simulation boundaries" made Min want to laugh, but the laugh got stuck in his throat as he remembered the 73% from that morning's screen. That evening, Min returned to the archive under the pretext of finishing branch tagging, but really because the name Legacy Patch kept looping in his mind like an undeclared variable. Ral was gone, leaving only the night mode lights and Lara softly humming some wordless tune like wind through wires. "You came back, Intern?" Lara asked, its polyhedral avatar drifting out from behind a data pillar like a geometric firefly. "I want to finish the cleanup," Min said, then added softly, "and take a closer look at a few things." "Certain things named Legacy Patch, perhaps?" Lara asked, its colors shifting to a teasing shade of purple. Min sighed, then nodded. "Access is restricted," Lara reminded him, "but I am permitted to supervise low-risk research queries." "Legacy Patch, human origin is not flagged low risk," Min said, eyes fixed on the locked branch floating above. "On record," Lara replied, "but records are always a few steps behind reality. If I initiate a read-only, time-limited, fully logged query session, then technically we are still compliant." Min swallowed dryly, then said, "Then, let's try that technically compliant level." Lara flared, and the surrounding data branches shrank back, leaving Legacy Patch/human origin sliding down into reach like a branch pulled from the shadows. The lock icon remained, but the red border shifted to an amber warning tone, and Lara said, "Access level, view, no modification." When Min touched it, what appeared wasn't a parameter table, but a stack of light documents, like paper files reconstructed as holograms. The first line on the cover page glowed, "Meta design, virtualized war, original spec." The language defaulted to the common tongue, but just beneath it was a small note in older Vietnamese. The letters slanted like fountain pen script. "Translation for Earth Team." Min flipped to the next page, dense paragraphs appearing, half sounding like game jargon, half like policy documents for a Security Council. "If preemptive strike meta becomes dominant," one bolded section read, "increase prolonged war costs to nudge real civilizations away from infinite attrition doctrines. If alliance defense meta gains preference," another line continued, "design reward mechanisms to reinforce tendencies toward long-term cooperative blocks in reality." Min felt as if someone were using a ruler to draw straight lines between each piece of code and each historical shift out there. He skimmed ahead to a table labeled Horizon 500 Years, with columns reading Long-Term Stability, Hot Conflict Reduction, Cold Conflict Acceptance. Near the end, a small note, untranslated, remained in Vietnamese. War in the real world must be folded into war in code for at least 500 years, or the galaxy will tear itself apart before it finishes learning the math. Min stared at the sentence, feeling as if he had just found a human bone embedded in the foundation of a house that looked perfect. "The Earth designers left a warning," Lara said softly, its voice quieter than the machine hum. "And it seems that, so far, no one has cared to read all the way to the last line." After reading the old Vietnamese warning line, Min didn't leave the archive, but stood among the holograms, listening to his heartbeat blend into the murmur of the machines. The light documents drifted around him like paper in water, each page a fragment of memory from people who had decided to change how the entire galaxy fought. Lara hovered by his shoulder, its colors softening into a calming green band, as if the AI understood the weight of what they had just opened. "There is another section in Legacy Patch you haven't touched yet," Lara said, its voice deliberately lowered, as if not to wake the past. Min swallowed, his throat dry as if he had gulped stardust, then reached out to flip to a new holographic file. The cover page lit up with a list of names and insignias under the title Earth Strategic Architects, Core Team. Next to each name was a reconstructed portrait, some with gray hair, some very young, some smiling, some not looking at the camera as if trying not to leave a trace. Min tapped one of the names, and the space before him morphed into a reconstructed recording. An old meeting room full of flat screens, tangled cables, and a window with blue earth hanging in the distance. A middle-aged Earth woman in a rumpled coat with hastily tied hair stood before a board crowded with equations and arrows linking real worlds to sim battlefields. "If we don't funnel aggressive behavior into a safe container, these civilizations will erase themselves within 1 to 2 centuries, her image said, voice tired but firm. Behind her, a large screen showed a galactic map with red zones spreading like cracks in glass, each region a war escalating. Min felt goosebumps rise on his arms as he remembered the 500-year warning and understood that these people had seen a future history texts had casually erased. Lara zoomed in on a small info box at the bottom of the image, which read, "Location, Experimental Orbital Station above Earth, Galactic Year, 482, relative to present." "So nearly half a millennium ago," Min murmured, feeling time stretch into a deep pit. "In public databases, Earth is recorded as entering official galactic contact around 200 years ago," Lara reminded him, voice sounding like it was reciting a fairy tale that had been rewritten. "So where did those missing 3 centuries go?" Min asked, eyes never leaving the small blue earth in the recording's window. "Into Legacy," Lara answered, its colors shifting to a pale yellow like aged paper. Min scrolled through the Earth Strategic Architects list and found an item labeled Internal Logs, Earth Team Only. When he opened it, the space in front of him changed hue, becoming a side-scrolling text feed like an ancient social network, but the content was urgent notes and confessions. "Day 67, 12th negotiation round," one entry read. "The hegemony insists on needing a visible victory to save face. We propose the concept of simulated victory as a substitute drug." Another log said, "Once civilizations start investing honor, artists, and myths into victories in game, they will be less inclined to risk those assets in real life." Min read, and felt a chill along his spine, suddenly understanding why the galaxy was addicted to watching sim war seasons like sports, while real front lines faded. Another log made him stop short. Proposal. After system stabilization, Earth team will gradually withdraw from central position and downgrade Earth's records to avoid excessive galactic dependence on a single civilization. They voluntarily turned themselves into a second-tier world, Min muttered, hearing his own voice echo in the empty room. It appears so, Lara said. By the logic of minimizing power concentration risk, that action is consistent. A statistics panel popped up beside them, comparing galaxy risk assessment if Earth team stays at the helm to risk if Earth withdraws and self-downgrades. In both columns, the numbers were lower than in the no-war virtualization baseline, but the Earth withdrawal scenario still showed a smoother stability curve over 500 years. Min felt an odd tension between pride and irritation, as if discovering his ancestors had both saved the galaxy and then chosen to play harmless civilians so no one would notice. Then who is steering now? He asked, pointing at the chart. Lara was silent for a beat, then opened a new window titled Transition Council, Post-Earth Oversight. The list contained not a single Earth name, only representatives from military and economic powers in the galactic core. They inherited a system built by humans, Lara said, but do not always adhere to the cautious boundaries recommended. Min thought of patch 317 and the 73%, feeling as if he'd just seen a pair of scissors hovering over that smooth 500-year stability curve. What is the Horizon Simulator? He asked, pointing at a tiny hourglass icon at the corner of the legacy document. A 500-year projection model the Earth team built for themselves, Lara replied, later locked under the label, too sensitive for routine use. Does it still work? Min asked, curiosity and fear twisting together like two cables. Technically, yes, Lara said.
Are we ready?
Policy-wise, no. If we run a temporary read-only simulation, internal environment only, Min suggested. Which side would that fall on? In between, Lara answered, and its colors shifted to a literal band of gray. Min took a deep breath, then touched the hourglass icon. The entire archive dimmed for a beat, light pooling around Min and Lara as a miniaturized galaxy appeared before them, a glowing timeline arcing away into the distance. Markers for present, 100 years, 250 years, 500 years, lit up like notches along the spine of a dragon made of light. A configuration window floated up asking, baseline scenario or scenario with patch 317 active. Min stared at the two choices, feeling like someone standing before two time machines, each opening onto a different dark hallway. Start with baseline, he said quietly. I need to know what this world looks like if no one touches the meta anymore. The timeline shifted, hot conflict dots fading as alliance. Structures, trade routes, and social stability indices glittered steadily. At the 500-year mark, a small green symbol appeared with the note, Galaxy maintains acceptable conflict levels. War simulation system remains primary outlet. Now try patch 317, Min said, his palms cold with sweat despite the perfectly controlled room temperature. Lara confirmed, and a new scenario drew itself. This time the glowing curve rippling more sharply, sections shifting from green to yellow and orange-red, markers labeled Warband Treaty Erosion, Low Probability, Proxy Conflict Increase, Border Remilitarization appeared one by one like dark moles on the skin of light. Around 150 to 200 years out, a deep red icon appeared over the Kepler region with the note, Risk of hot conflict escaping simulation boundaries, sharply increased following economic meta-adjustments. Min's stomach clenched as he watched the hot conflict marker blink on the curve, like a keyword the original designers had sworn to erase from the future. At the 500-year mark, the final symbol appeared, neither green nor red, but pale gray, with the note, "Data drifts beyond stable modeling range. Design philosophy, re-evaluation required." Lara stayed silent for a long time before saying, "According to Horizon, patch 317 doesn't break the system immediately, but it pushes us off the trajectory the Earth team originally targeted." Min stared at the two curves, one smooth and green, the other rippled with yellow and red, and felt like he stood in a control room where the steering wheel had been handed to people who never read the manual. "And now," Lara said softly, "an Earth intern is the first to look at this in centuries." Min wasn't sure whether he should feel honored or terrified, but he knew one thing for certain. 73% was no longer a lonely number on a screen. It was the first nail in the door of a future his ancestors had tried to open. As Horizon faded and the future curves dissolved into darkness, Min stayed in the archive for a long moment, feeling as if his feet stood on a thin pane of glass suspended above 500 years of history. When he stepped into the corridor, the Academy lights looked unchanged, but in his mind every number suddenly had a tale stretching 5 centuries ahead. That night he barely slept, lying in his pod, staring at the fake star ceiling and imagining stable curves being slowly bent by patches that were just game balance. The next morning, meta and balance felt like a kicked beehive, everyone swarming toward the central area around the Kepler map. The Kepler map shone brighter today, trade routes blinking thickly like the glowing veins of a creature running a fever. "Congratulations, everyone," Koresh called out, holding a red-framed data board. "We have officially attracted the attention of the Transition Council." A few engineers groaned softly, while Sierra merely narrowed her eyes at the floating headline, "Request for Patch 317 Reassessment." "Official reason," Koresh read, "is concern over long-term impact on multi-faction experience." "Unofficial reason," he added, "is that some big sponsors think this Kepler season isn't dramatic enough on broadcast." Hearing "not dramatic enough," Min felt it stick to the 73% in his mind, forming a new kind of resentment equation. "The Council wants us to prove Patch 317 is system safe," Koresh said, "or propose an alternative that keeps engagement metrics without shredding the meta. Short version," he shrugged, "we have to entertain the audience without accidentally burning Sector K44 in real life." The mention of K44 made Sierra's eyes flash before she quickly looked down at her screen, pretending to scrutinize a defense parameter table. "Min," Koresh called, pointing in his direction as if casually. "Yesterday, Lara sent a full assessment of your first session with the auxiliary parameter vault." Min felt the blood vessels in his neck warm as he glanced up at Lara hovering in the corner near the ceiling, its many faces tilted down at him as if nothing were unusual. "What did the assessment say?" Min asked, trying to keep his voice even. "That you tend," Lara cut in, "to see parameters as moral causes rather than just numbers." A few people laughed, a few winced, and Koresh nodded as if that were exactly what he wanted to hear. "So," Koresh continued, "you're joining the Kepler Shadow Sim team today." The phrase Shadow Sim appeared in the air, linked to a smaller, paler version of Kepler that hovered beside the main map like the shadow of another world. "This is an isolated environment," Koresh explained. "All changes run internally, and Lara logs them, with no direct line to the primary servers." "In other words," Sierra added, "if you blow up Kepler here, out there only a few ugly charts get deleted." Min nodded, but in his mind he still saw Horizon's two curves overlapping, one green, one rippling red. They dispersed back to their stations, and a small area around the shadow sim was marked by a blue light border. Experimental zone, as Lara captioned it. Min sat at his assigned station, with the smaller Kepler map in front of him, and sliders for war costs, victory rewards, and prolonged economic pressure. In the lower corner, the current version's real impact index showed a row of orange numbers, with regime change likelihood, K44, 73%, pulsing slowly. The shadow sim still uses the same prediction model, Lara murmured in his ear. The only difference is no one but us sees this log. So the goal is what? Min asked. Keep players happy, keep Kepler intact, and drag that 73% as low as possible. That's a reasonable definition of good balance, Lara replied, sounding almost like it was smiling. Min started by reducing rewards for blitzkrieg-style quick wins while increasing long-term benefits for stable trade agreements. He tweaked coefficients so factions earned honor points for withdrawing at the right moment, not just for decisive attacks. On another panel, he added a war fatigue mechanic that rose faster if a faction held military victories but mismanaged its economy. You're teaching them advanced math while they think they're playing a game, Lara observed. I'm just copying the Earth designer's philosophy, Min replied, recalling the phrase, "The galaxy must live long enough to finish learning the math." Sira quietly moved her chair closer, opening a side screen that showed data specifically on K44, where a small Thal colony was marked by a pale blue dot. "My family has people there," she said softly. "So if you plan something crazy, make the meta save them, not grind them up." Min nodded, feeling that 73% was no longer an anonymous variable, but a shadow hanging over a blue dot carrying someone else's home. They ran the shadow sim for the first time with the new adjustments, letting the system play out a full season at accelerated speed. The early battles looked even fiercer, with spectacular opening strikes that the simulated audience rated very highly. But as war fatigue rose and treaty benefits began to outweigh short-term wins, factions in the sim gradually shifted toward long-term agreements. In K44, the Thal colony became the center of a multi-faction trade network instead of a battlefield stuck between two rival blocks. The real impact index updated, and the 73% ticked down to 52%, then 31%, finally settling at 19% once the sim stabilized. Min exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath since hitting the run button. "Good," Sira said, and for the first time since Min had met her, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. "The problem," Lara said, breaking the brief relief, "is that audience engagement metrics in the sim dropped by 8% due to fewer spectacular devastation events." Min looked at the two columns, one for real lives, one for entertainment, and felt like he was holding two ends of cables plugged into the same overloaded system. "Which column will the council like more?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "The longer green bar or the more lucrative purple bar," Lara replied, displaying two possible council reply emails with the phrase, "Thank you for optimizing the system," tinted in two different tones. "Then we need to make them think we're optimizing the purple bar," Min said slowly, while actually extending the green one. Sira let out a short laugh. "That sounds very Earth." Lara began tagging Min's tweaks in two colors, noting, "appears to increase drama," and "actually reduces escalation probability," as if writing a legend for a double-layered painting. Min suddenly understood this wasn't just a Kepler exercise, but a test of whether the Earth designer's philosophy could return, hiding inside the very system they'd once left. And somewhere above, in an office with windows facing the Academy's core, a faint access alert began blinking on the system control board with the line, "Horizon Sim, reference pattern detected." On level 12 of the Academy, a narrow office looked directly into the softly glowing server core, and on the console by the window, the alert Horizon Sim reference pattern detected kept blinking patiently. The chair's owner returned with a cup of pale purple caffeine solution in hand, her system control jacket wrinkled at the shoulders from too many night shifts. She was Ira, of a species with eyes that reached toward the temples and blue light veins under the skin, hired to stare at things everyone else preferred to ignore. Ira set the cup down, frowned at the still-lit Horizon alert, then slid her chair closer to the console and expanded the log details. Text appeared. Module Horizon Sim, Legacy Restricted, initiated by L4R, current user, Min H, origin, Earth. Ira drew a small breath, the light veins in her neck glowing slightly. She had never seen Horizon referenced once in 10 years on this post. She opened another log layer and saw Legacy Patch, Human Origin, Read-Only Session, Pattern Similarity, 87% to Original Earth Team Design Profile. Great, Ira muttered, lifting her caffeine cup as if to toast the trouble. Earth returns through the Intern entrance. She fired a secure ping to the archive level for Ral with a single line. Horizon just got touched. Care to explain? Down in the archive, Ral was about to leave his shift when the notification popped up in mid-air, making him drop his light pen onto the desk. He read the line, frowned, then pulled up Laura's internal log and saw the session tagged MEH, labeled Read Only, Full Log, with the faint shadow of Legacy Patch still hanging there. The kid moves fast, Ral muttered, his voice carrying both irritation and a hint of reluctant admiration. He opened a direct channel to level 12, Ira's image appearing before him like a clear pane, her elongated eyes slightly narrowed. Is this what happens when you shove an Earthling into meta and balance? Ira asked bluntly, skipping any preamble. He only read, didn't break, Ral replied, and Horizon shows he's pulling Kepler's trajectory closer to the Earth team line, not pushing it further away. Ira glanced at the illustrative data Ral pushed up, seeing 2 Horizon curves, one from the old meta, one from Min's, with the latter less jagged around the Kepler segment. Then my problem, Ira said, is not that he's good, but that he's good in exactly the way Legacy warned shouldn't be left unsupervised. She sent another ping, this time straight to the upper-level command office where the Academy Director's emblem glowed on a dark glass door. Meanwhile, in Meta and Balance, Min was fiddling with minor tweaks in the Shadow Sim, unaware that his ID had climbed onto several monitoring boards he'd never see. Sira sat beside him, chin propped on her hand, watching K-44's trade routes blink like she was reading relatives' pulse lines on a monitor. An internal notice popped up in the air. Minch, Intern, report to level 12. System control. Priority, high. Min's stomach clenched as he glanced at Sira and saw she'd read the alert on her own HUD. Don't let them dump everything on you, Sira said, voice low but firm. Remember, you weren't the only one to sign that access. Lara did too.
The asset has been compromised.
Min nodded, stowed his backpack in a locker, then stepped into the lift, feeling as if each level up added a layer of invisible gravity on his shoulders. When the doors opened on level 12, the space was quieter and brighter, with fewer screens but each one dense with system data instead of war scenes. Ira waited for him just outside the office, long blue eyes flicking quickly from his intern badge to the Meta and Balance logo on his wrist interface. Intern Min, Earth, she said, as if reading a log entry. Come in. Inside, Ral leaned against a wall. Koresh sat behind a desk welded to the floor, and a locked holographic cube glowed with Lara's emblem in debug mode. On the wall behind the desk, a large window looked down over the Academy's core, server clusters blinking like a thundercloud trapped in glass. Sit, Koresh said, voice less relaxed than usual. hand resting on a data slab with Min's name glowing on it. Min sat, the chair feeling harder than any he'd ever used, though it was surely engineered to ergonomic perfection. "Do you know why you're here?" Ira asked, stepping aside so he could see the horizon alert open on the wall screen. "Because I read what I shouldn't," Min answered honestly, eyes fixed on the Horizon Sim label in the screen's corner. "And because of how you read," Ral interjected, "Horizon flags your adjustment patterns as 87% similar to the original Earth team." Min swallowed, suddenly more aware of the Origin Earth tag under his name in every system log. "The Horizon module isn't locked because it's dangerous," Ira said slowly, "but because it proves the system's designers understood the galaxy well enough to make the Council uncomfortable." "And now," Koresh said, "an Earth intern has accidentally reconnected that line of thinking in an experimental Kepler patch." Min looked from one to the other, then said, "If the question is whether I invoked Horizon on purpose to overthrow someone, the answer is no. And if the question is why I touched Legacy," he went on, "it's because Kepler's real impact index looks like a loaded gun no one wants to check the aiming on." Lara emitted an electronic ahem inside the cube, like coughing, politely for speaking rights. "I confirm," Lara said. "The Legacy session ran in read-only mode, fully logged, and Horizon was executed in an observer sandbox in full compliance with our current loopholes." "In other words," Ira concluded, "you are both standing on the law's edge without officially crossing it." She tapped the console, and a new image appeared. Kepler in real time, not Shadow Sim, with economic graphs and diplomatic signals updating by the minute. "This is why we can't keep everything in theory," Ira said, "because out there, the Council has scheduled patch 317 for deployment to the primary servers within 2 cycles. A countdown appeared in the map's corner, small but clear. Time to patch push, 0157. Your Shadow Sim," Koresh said, "is currently the only evidence that another meta configuration can both protect Kepler and not kill the broadcast season. So," Ira said, "we offer a choice. You go back to level 47, pretend you never saw Horizon, and let 3.17 ship as planned, or you formally become proposer of an alternative 3.17b configuration with your name on the log. If you choose 3.17b," Ral added, "you'll get tagged Earth Origin Advisory, and Horizon will keep mirroring your decisions like a ghost Earth team." Min looked up at live Kepler, saw tiny K-44 amid the web of rotes, and remembered Syrah's family and the 19% his Shadow Sim had just dragged the risk down to. "If I do nothing," he said, "that 73% still belongs to me, only no one knows it. Then I choose 3.17b. Ira nodded, touched the console, and behind them live Kepler gained a shadow layer, meta configuration 3.17b deployed in parallel for evaluation. "The Council still wants 3.17 pushed," Koresh said, "but now we're allowed to attach 3.17b as a reference scenario proposed by Earth Advisor." A small window popped up by the map, showing a distant conference room where Council delegates sat around a table, the feed slightly fuzzy, but their core world insignias clear on their shoulders. "They'll review both," Ira said, "and if 3.17b offers comparable drama with lower risk, we have a chance to flip the final decision." "And if 3.17 wins," Min asked, "then everything I did is just a draft deleted from cache." "Not exactly," Lara said, its voice emanating from a cube now a little less constrained. "Horizon has archived your pattern, and I, regrettably, have as well. From now on," Ira said quietly, "every time Kepler shakes, we'll know exactly where you laid hands on the meta." Min looked out at the Academy core through the window, thinking of the Earth designers who had once stood on some similar station, deciding to box war into code for 500 years and then vanish into legacy notes. He didn't know if he had the reach to go as far as they did, but as he watched regime change likelihood, shadow 19%, primary 73%, blink side by side, he understood that the Kepler test had officially begun. With less than a cycle to patch deployment, meta and balance shone white like an operating theater, the Kepler map hanging in midair like a patient awaiting judgment. On the left was primary 3.16, on the right the shadow 3.17b, two meta layers over the same cluster of stars sketching two different futures. The real impact index showed side by side, primary 73% and shadow 19%, like two numbers arguing silently in front of everyone. "The council meets in 15 minutes, Koresh said, eyes never leaving Kepler. "And this time, we're not sending a proposal, we're sending a live test." Min stood in the shadow sim zone, feeling like he was in the cockpit of a ship whose destination was 5 centuries away. On his wrist, the new tag shone clearly. Earth Origin Advisory, Kepler Meta 3.16b. "Horizon will only observe," Lara reminded him, hovering by his shoulder. "But the Council will not only observe." On level 12, Ira opened a live link to the Council chamber, the core world delegates appearing around an oval table like an orbit made of flesh and cloth. "Kepler is running 2 metas," Ira said plainly. "One optimized for drama, one optimized for the future." A hegemony delegate tapped scaled fingers on the table, the icon of a major sponsor blinking in the corner of his personal display. "We care about stability," he said, "but a war sim season no one watches is pointless." A Thal delegate brought up the border colonies, voice soft but hard. "We care about Kepler not turning into a memorial map." "Where is your Earth advisor?" another delegate asked. "If you put Earth in the logs, at least show us a face." Ira switched the feed, and Min's image appeared small at the bottom edge of the meeting, still at the shadow sim station with Lara hovering like a polyhedral halo over his shoulder. "Intern Min, Earth," Ira introduced. "Proposer of configuration 3.17b. Min gave a brief greeting, feeling like a student called to the board, except the board was a star cluster, and the audience decided its fate. 3.17b drops measurable drama by 8%, a delegate reminded him. "Why should we choose the less exciting curve?" Min looked straight into the camera and said, "Because 8% less exciting on screen buys 54% less chance of a real government being overthrown." Lara quietly pushed support data into the meeting. 2 parallel graphs, one the audience curve, one the risk curve, their intersection marked by a small white dot. "The original Earth designers," Min continued, "found that crossing point where war could exist in-game without spilling out. 3.17 shifts that point faster than we can react." A moment of silence passed. Then the council chair said, "Fine, we'll stop arguing with philosophy. We'll argue with live data. We authorize a public test window," he went on. "Kepler will run 3.17 on the main feed and 3.17b on a parallel channel with a single major event to compare responses." "What major event?" a delegate asked, but the answer came from elsewhere before the chair could speak. In meta and balance, the Kepler map suddenly flashed red at the edge of K44, as a chain of anomalies lit up simultaneously from a small mining station on the rim. Lara zoomed the live feed. An old station with outdated defenses, being contested in-game by 2 rival factions for resources that were tied to real contracts outside. The real impact index spiked to 81%, under 3.17 as auto clauses began triggering economic penalties if either side lost control of the station. "Here's your major event," Ira said icily over the council link. "A bug in old contracts combined with the new meta." Min looked at his shadow sim and saw the same event, but in 3.17b war fatigue and treaty rewards had nudged both sides toward turning the station into a profitable neutral zone. "If 3.17 runs unchecked," Lara said quietly, "the auto penalties will force the governments behind those player factions to prove strength with real-world moves." "And if 3.77b is activated here," Min muttered, "we can turn it into a season-wide collaboration event instead of a war trigger." "Min," Ira called over the internal channel, "the council is watching live. If you have any Earth ideas, now is the time." Min took a deep breath, pulled up the event design panel, and sketched a scenario. Operation Twin Anchor. If both sides agree to co-own the station and share resource data, they unlock a season-only mission chain with massive honor and publicity rewards. Lara instantly recalculated the real impact index in the shadow sim, K44 risk dropping from 19% to 11% as economic penalties were swapped for collaboration bonuses. "We need to broadcast it as a special event," Min said, "so the audience still sees drama. Just the drama of whether factions can beat a cooperation puzzle." On level 12, Ira packaged the proposal into an urgent packet to the council. Temporary activation of 3.17b for Operation Twin Anchor at K44 station. Parallel test of audience impact and real-world risk. Confirmation windows popped up in the chamber, delegates glancing at the projected 11% risk and a chart reading projected engagement near 3.117 levels with proper promotion. The chair sighed, then said, "Fine. Kepler gets 10 minutes of Earth-style trial. 3.17b is authorized to take control of K44 parameters for this event window." As the order went through, in meta and balance, the live and shadow maps merged at K44, the 3.17b layer sliding on top like a protective pane over a deep crack. In the game, Operation Twin Anchor special event flashed across millions of player HUDs, turning the station skirmish into a cooperation challenge with a cluster-wide leaderboard. Commentators on the broadcast shifted tone instantly, from kill counts to speculating which faction would concede resources to unlock the hidden mission chain. Viewers roared as the two factions sent negotiation signals, partly to save face, partly to test whether the hidden rewards were worth the hype. On level 47, Sira stared at the K44 dot, seeing trade routes redraw around the station instead of converging on it like knife points, and her clenched fist slowly loosened. The live RII for K44 dropped step by step, 81%, 60%, 37%, like a fever thermometer falling, while the engagement board climbed as viewers poured into the event channel. "They're cheering for a treaty," Lara said, almost amazed. Positive chat metrics surpass any major battle this season. In the council chamber, a spectacle index chart appeared with the note, "Unexpected cooperation event. Viewership up 12% compared to projected battle." The hegemony delegates settled back, scaled eyes narrowing, then relaxing, and finally gave a small nod. Sufficiently dramatic, and apparently sells more peace-branded ads than expected. The Thal delegate did not smile, only said, "And my family's colony does not become a textbook example." As the event window hit 0002, Kepler settled into a treaty state, and the cluster-wide real impact index stopped at a level even lower than the original shadow forecast. The chair slowly dimmed the hollows and said, "Meta 3.1 is approved to replace 3.1 for all clusters with real-world linkage risk. Note, Earth Pattern Advisory." In system control, the Horizon Sim restricted tag on Ira's display shifted to Horizon Sim Supervised Advisory. Ira glanced at Min on the side screen and asked, "Do you intend to go back to being just an intern after today?" Min smiled wearily. "I still have final exams at the academy, but if the system needs someone to teach balancing meta without blowing up the galaxy, I can apply as a teaching assistant." Raoul laughed aloud in the archive corner, then sent an internal note. "Propose new Preventive Strategy Department. Earth Origin Advisor, Teaching Assistant, Min." On level 47, Sierra received a short message from home in K-44. "Just signed a new trade pact. The kids are begging to rewatch the Operation Twin Anchor event." She looked toward the Shadow Sim zone and saw Min tidying up his HUD as if he'd just finished a tougher-than-usual lab, not dragged a star cluster back from the brink of war. That night in his pod, the fake star ceiling was unchanged, but this time Min opened Horizon on his personal interface and ran a small sim. What if Kepler stays stable for another 500 years? The curve appeared smooth, not perfect, but without red spikes jutting up like saw teeth. And beside it, Horizon had added its own new note. "Warning: human factors remain unpredictable. Keep humans in loop." Min chuckled softly and told Lara, "Looks like even the system has learned an Earth philosophy. Never let the machine drive alone." "Exactly," Lara replied. "The Earth team left a meta for war, but they also left a meta for responsibility. That part is now yours to extend." Min closed Horizon and stared at the artificial sky, wondering if somewhere on an old station the original Earth designers had ever imagined an intern would someday read and continue their unfinished notes. On level 12, the old Horizon alert was gone, replaced by a small box reading, "Horizon Sim, scheduled weekly strategic health check. Supervisor, Ira. Advisory, Min. AI liaison, L4R." And somewhere out near the Kepler cluster, ships still moved and simulated battles still exploded as light. But now, behind every line of code, bullets lay a question the Earth team once wrote. Does this move make the next 500 years easier to live in? The War Virtualization Academy still recruited, still taught people how to win in games. But from the day Kepler passed its test, a new line entered the syllabus. The ultimate goal of strategy is not to win this war, but to ensure the next ones exist only in code.